The office was a tomb of silence. Save for the hum of the air conditioner and the faint pulse of New York City beyond the glass. I stood frozen, my hand still clutching a stack of reports. As the lock clicked shut behind me, my boss, Ethan Caldwell, leaned against the door, his sharp jawline catching the glow of the desk lamp, and his eyes those piercing, unreadable eyes locked onto mine. "James," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "We need to talk." I'd been working for Ethan for 6 months at Caldwell & Associates, a sleek marketing firm in Manhattan where ambition was currency and burnout was the tax. At 25, I was the youngest analyst, scrappy and eager, clawing my way up from a small-town life in Ohio. Ethan, 28, was the golden boy, charming, ruthless, and untouchable, the kind of man who could sell ice to a blizzard. Everyone wanted his approval. I wanted more than that, though I'd never admit it out loud. Not yet. The late nights had become routine, but tonight felt different. The office was empty. The rest of the team long gone to their overpriced apartments or trendy bars. I'd stayed because Ethan asked me to. His request casual but firm. "James, I need you to run the Q4 projections again. Stay late." I didn't question it. I never did. But now, with the door locked and his gaze pinning me in place, my pulse raced for reasons I couldn't name. "Talk about what?" I managed, setting the reports down, my hands betraying a slight tremor. Ethan pushed off the door, his steps deliberate as he crossed the room. He stopped just close enough for me to catch the faint cedarwood scent of his cologne, close enough to feel the air shift. "You've been hiding something," he said, not accusingly, but with a weight that made my stomach twist. "And so have I." I swallowed hard, my mind scrambling. Hiding something. Did he know? No, he couldn't. I'd been careful, kept my personal life locked tighter than this office door. Growing up in a town where being openly gay could get you shunned, I'd learned to bury that part of myself deep. New York was supposed to be different, but old habits die hard. I'd never told anyone at work, never let a single glance linger too long on Ethan, no matter how much my chest ached when he smiled at me. "Ethan, I started, but he cut me off, stepping closer. "Don't lie to me, James." His voice softened, but there was an edge to it, like he was daring me to come clean. "I see you. Every day, I see you." My breath caught. Was he saying what I thought he was? Or was this some kind of trap? A test I couldn't afford to fail. Ethan was a master at reading people. It's what made him so good at his job. But this felt personal, raw, like he was peeling back layers I'd spent years building. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper, holding it out to me. My fingers brushed his as I took it, the contact sending a jolt through me. I unfolded it, my heart pounding. It was a note, scrawled in my own handwriting. "Meet me at the Anchor, 7 p.m. J." I'd written it weeks ago, meant for a friend, but I must have left it on my desk. The Anchor was a gay bar in the Village. Not exactly a secret, but not a place I'd ever mentioned at work. "You dropped this," Ethan said, his eyes searching mine. I wasn't snooping, I swear. But I saw it, and I had to know. "Know what?" My mind screamed, but I couldn't speak. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Ethan took a step back, giving me space, but his gaze never wavered. "I'm not out either," he said quietly, the words landing like a confession. "Not here. Not anywhere. But I'm tired of pretending. James, aren't you?" The question hung between us, fragile and dangerous. I wanted to run, to laugh it off, to say he'd misunderstood. But the truth clawed its way up, and for the first time in years, I didn't push it down. "Yeah," I whispered. "I'm tired." The next hour blurred into a haze of words and silences. Ethan told me about his own life growing up in a wealthy Connecticut family where expectations were a cage, where being anything less than the perfect son wasn't an option. He'd known he was gay since he was 16, but he'd buried it under ambition, under the need to prove himself. He'd dated women publicly, played the part, but the weight of it was crushing him. "I saw you, James," he said, sitting on the edge of his desk, his tie loosened. "The way you carry yourself, like you're always holding something back. I know that look. I see it in the mirror every day." I told him about Ohio, about the whispers in my hometown, the way my parents' love came with conditions I could never meet. Moving to New York was my escape. But even here, I was afraid of being seen, of losing everything I'd worked for. Ethan listened, his eyes soft but intense, like he was memorizing every word. We didn't kiss that night, didn't cross that line. But something shifted. A door unlocking not just the office door, but something deeper. When I left at midnight, the city lights brighter than ever, I felt lighter, like I could breathe for the first time in years. The next morning, I walked into the office expecting everything to be different. But Ethan was all business. His suit crisp, his smile professional. "Morning, James." Q4 reports on my desk by noon. No mention of last night. No hint of the secret we'd shared. I wondered if I'd imagined it, if I'd misread everything. But then, as I passed his office later, he caught my eye and gave me a small, knowing nod. My heart leapt. This wasn't over, it was just beginning. The days that followed were a tightrope walk. Every glance from Ethan felt like a secret. Every meeting charged with something unspoken. I threw myself into work, crunching numbers and polishing presentations. But my mind was elsewhere in him, on the way his voice softened when he said my name, on the possibility of something I'd never dared to hope for. By Friday, the office was buzzing with the end of a brutal quarter. We'd landed a major client, and Ethan was hosting a team dinner at a swanky restaurant in Soho. I didn't want to go. Crowds made me anxious, and I wasn't sure I could handle being near Ethan in public without giving myself away. But he insisted, his tone light but firm. "You're part of the team, James. Be there." The restaurant was all exposed brick and dim lighting. The kind of place where you're supposed to feel sophisticated but end up feeling out of place. I sat at the far end of the table, nursing a beer, watching Ethan work the room. He was magnetic, laughing with the senior partners, charming the waitstaff. But every so often, his eyes found mine, and the world seemed to pause. After dinner, as the team spilled onto the street, Ethan caught my arm. "Walk with me," he said, his voice low enough that no one else heard. My heart stuttered, but I nodded, falling into step beside him. The city was alive, horns blaring, neon signs flashing. We walked in silence for a block before he spoke. I meant what I said that night. He started, his hands in his pockets. About being tired of pretending. But it's complicated. James. I stopped, turning to face him. Complicated how? You're my boss. I get it. If this is a bad idea. It's not that. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration flickering across his face. It's the firm. My family. They're traditional. If they find out, it could ruin everything I've built. I felt a pang. Not just for him, but for us. So what are you saying? We just ignore this. He looked at me, his eyes raw. I don't want to. But we have to be careful. No one can know. Careful. The word felt like a weight. But I nodded. I'd spent my whole life being careful hiding who I was. What I felt. I could do it again. For him. Over the next few weeks, careful became our code. Stolen moments in the office after hours. Brief touches when no one was looking a hand on my back as he passed my desk. A lingering glance during a meeting. We didn't talk about it. Didn't name it. But it was there. Growing stronger with every shared secret. One night, as we pored over a client pitch at 10 p.m., Ethan closed his laptop and leaned back in his chair. Come with me this weekend, he said suddenly. There's a cabin upstate. Just us. No one will know. My pulse raced. A weekend alone with him sounded like a dream. But it also terrified me. What if this was too much? Too fast? What if we got caught? But his eyes were steady. Hopeful. And I couldn't say no. Okay, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Let's go. The cabin was tucked in the Catskills, surrounded by pines and silence. It was rustic but cozy, with a stone fireplace and a view of the mountains. We spent the first day hiking, laughing, letting the walls between us crumble. That night, by the fire, Ethan reached for my hand. His touch was warm, grounding, and when he leaned in to kiss me, it felt like the world finally made sense. For 2 days, we were just James and Ethan, not boss and employee. Not two men hiding who they were. We talked about everything, our fears, our dreams, the lives we wanted but didn't know how to claim. It was perfect. Until Sunday morning, when Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from his father, board meeting Monday. We need to discuss your future at the firm. The air shifted. Ethan's face tightened, and I knew reality was creeping back in. We'll figure it out, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Back in the city, the weight of Ethan's word swale figure it out hung over us like a storm cloud. Monday's board meeting loomed, and though he didn't say it, I could feel his fear. His family's influence over the firm was ironclad, and any hint of scandal could derail his career. I wanted to believe we could keep this secret, but secrets have a way of slipping through the cracks. At work, we played our parts. Ethan was the polished executive. I was the diligent analyst. But the tension was palpable, like a current running beneath every interaction. During a team meeting, his hand brushed mine as he handed me a file, and I nearly dropped it, my face flushing. Sarah, a senior analyst with a knack for noticing everything, raised an eyebrow but said nothing. I told myself I was paranoid, But the seed of doubt was planted. That night, Ethan asked me to stay late again. The office was empty, the city skyline glowing through the windows. He locked the door, just like that first night. But this time, there was no hesitation. He pulled me close, his lips finding mine. And for a moment, everything else faded: the firm, the risks, the world outside. But when we pulled apart, his eyes were troubled. "My father knows something," he said, his voice low. "He asked me today if I was distracted. Said I've been off my game." My stomach dropped. "Does he suspect?" "No," Ethan said quickly, but he didn't sound sure. "Not yet. But we need to be more careful. No more late nights for a while." I nodded, though it felt like a punch. Careful again. Always careful. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we were running out of time. The next week was torture. Ethan kept his distance, his texts short and professional. I threw myself into work, staying late on my own, hoping he'd show up. He didn't. By Friday, I was a wreck, second-guessing everything. Had I misread him? Was he pulling away because he regretted it? Then, at 9 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text: "Meet me at the Anchor." Now, my heart leapt, but there was a knot in my chest. The Anchor was public. Risky. Why there? When I arrived, the bar was crowded, pulsing with music and laughter. Ethan was in the back, in a dark sweater instead of his usual suit, his face half hidden by a baseball cap. He looked younger, vulnerable, and my chest ached at the sight of him. "I needed to see you," he said, pulling me into a booth. "I'm sorry for shutting you out. This week, it's been hell." He told me about the board meeting, how his father had grilled him about his focus, his commitment. "They're watching me, James. If they find out about us, it's not just my job. It's everything." I reached for his hand under the table, my thumb brushing his knuckles. "Then we'll be careful. We can do this." His eyes softened, but there was a flicker of doubt. "You don't know my family. They'd destroy us." Before I could respond, a shadow fell over the table. Sarah stood there, drink in hand, her eyes wide with recognition. "James." "Ethan." Her voice was sharp, curious. My heart stopped. "Hey, Sarah," Ethan said smoothly, pulling his hand from mine. "Just grabbing a drink with James. Team bonding. You know." She smirked, but her eyes lingered. Calculating. "Right. Team bonding." She walked away, but I could feel her gaze burning into us. "We need to go?" Ethan whispered, his face pale. We left separately, my mind racing. Sarah wasn't stupid. She'd seen something. And in a city like New York, gossip was a weapon. The next morning, the office felt like a minefield. Sarah's desk was across from mine, and every time she glanced my way, I braced myself. She hadn't said anything, but her silence was louder than words. Ethan was in meetings all day, his door closed, his face unreadable when I caught a glimpse of him. I tried to focus on work, but my hands shook as I typed, my mind replaying last night. By noon, I couldn't take it anymore. I knocked on Ethan's door, my heart pounding. He looked up from his laptop, his expression softening for a split second before hardening again. James. Not now. We need to talk, I said, closing the door behind me. Sarah saw us. She knows something. He leaned back, rubbing his temples. I know. She asked me this morning if there was something going on. I denied it, but she's not buying it. My stomach twisted. What do we do? We stick to the plan, he said, his voice firm. We're colleagues. Nothing more. She has no proof. But I could see the strain in his eyes, the way his jaw clenched. He was scared, and so was I. We'd been so careful, but one slip at the anchor had cracked the facade. I wanted to reach for him, to tell him we'd get through this. But the distance between us felt wider than ever. That afternoon, Ethan's father, Richard Caldwell, swept into the office unannounced. He was a towering man, all sharp suits and sharper eyes, the kind of person who could silence a room with a glance. He called Ethan into a private meeting, and when Ethan emerged an hour later, he looked like he'd been through a war. He's putting me on a performance review, Ethan told me later, in the stairwell where no one could overhear. Says I'm not focused enough. If I don't shape up, I'm out. Out. I couldn't believe it. Ethan was the firm's star. He can't do that. He can. And he will, Ethan said bitterly. He's been looking for an excuse to tighten the leash. If he finds out about us, he didn't finish the sentence. But he didn't need to. That night, I went home alone, my apartment feeling colder than usual. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were losing control, that the life we'd started to imagine was slipping away. I texted Ethan, we need to talk. For real. No response. The next day, Sarah cornered me in the break room. You and Ethan, she said, her voice low. What's the deal? There's no deal, I said, my throat tight. We're just colleagues. She raised an eyebrow. I saw you at the anchor. You didn't look like colleagues. I forced a laugh, my heart racing. You're reading too much into it, Sarah. She didn't push, but her smile was cold. Be careful, James. This place eats secrets for breakfast. Her words haunted me for days. Ethan and I barely spoke. Our interactions reduced to curt emails and brief nods in the hallway. I missed the way he made me feel seen, alive. But fear was winning, and I didn't know how to fight it. Then, on Friday, Ethan texted me, meet me at the cabin. Tonight. I stared at the message, torn between hope and dread. I didn't know what he wanted, but I knew I couldn't say no. The drive to the Catskills was a blur, the city fading into dark highways and starlit skies. When I pulled up to the cabin, Ethan was already there, leaning against the porch railing, a bottle of whiskey in his hand. He looked exhausted, his usual polish replaced by something raw and unguarded. You came, he said, his voice rough. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't, I admitted, stepping onto the porch. What's going on? Ethan, you've been avoiding me. He took a swig from the bottle, wincing. I'm scared. James. I've never felt like this before. And it's messing me up. My heart softened. But I kept my distance. You think I'm not scared? Sarah's watching us. Your father's breathing down your neck. We're one wrong move from losing everything. I know, he said, his eyes meeting mine. But I don't want to lose you. The words hit me like a tidal wave. I stepped closer, my hand finding his. Then don't push me away. We can figure this out together. For a moment, we just stood there, the night wrapping around us. Then he pulled me into a kiss, desperate and fierce, like he was trying to hold on to something slipping away. We stumbled inside, the fire crackling in the hearth. And for a few hours, the world was just us two people trying to carve out a piece of happiness in a world that didn't understand. But reality crashed back in the morning. Ethan's phone buzzed with an email from his father. Board expects a full report on your progress Monday. Don't disappoint me. He stared at the screen, his face pale. I can't keep doing this, he said, almost to himself. Hiding. Lying. It's killing me. Then don't, I said, my voice shaking. Come out. Tell them the truth. We'll deal with the fallout together. He laughed, bitter and hollow. You don't know my father. If I come out, I'm done. The firm, my familial cut me off. And what about us? I asked, my chest tight. Are we just a secret you keep until it's convenient? His eyes flashed with pain. That's not fair. James. You know it's not like that. Then what is it like? I pressed. Because I can't keep doing this either. I'm tired of hiding who I am. We argued, our voices rising. The cabin no longer a sanctuary, but a battlefield. I wanted to fight for us. But Ethan's fear was a wall I couldn't break through. When I left that morning, he didn't stop me. I drove back to the city, tears blurring the road, wondering if I'd just lost him for good. Back at work, the tension was unbearable. Sarah's knowing looks. Ethan's guarded distance was all too much. Then, on Wednesday, everything unraveled. Richard Caldwell called a surprise meeting. And when Ethan walked in, his father's eyes were cold, calculating. James, Richard said, his voice cutting through the room. I hear you've been spending a lot of time with my son. Care to explain? The conference room felt like a courtroom. Richard's gaze a gavel ready to fall. Ethan stood frozen, his hands clenched at his sides. I could feel every eye on me, Sarah's. The other analysts. The partners. My mouth went dry, the truth clawing at my throat. But I couldn't let it out. Not like this. It's just work. Mr. Caldwell, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Ethan asked me to stay late on some projects. That's all. Richard's eyes narrowed. But he didn't push. I see. Well, let's keep it professional. Shall we? His tone was a warning. Sharp and clear. The meeting dragged on. But I barely heard a word. Ethan avoided my gaze, his face a mask. When it was over, he left without a word. And I felt like I was drowning. Sarah caught me in the hallway. Her voice low. You're playing with fire. James. Walk away while you still can. I wanted to snap at her. to tell her to mind her own business. But she was right. This was a game we couldn't win, not without losing something. That night, I texted Ethan, "We need to talk now." He didn't respond. By Friday, I was a wreck, barely sleeping, my work slipping. I stayed late, hoping Ethan would show up. But the office was empty. Then, at 10 p.m., the door opened, and there he was, his tie loose, his eyes haunted. "I can't do this anymore," he said, his voice breaking. "I thought I could, but I can't." My heart sank. "So that's it. You're giving up." "I'm trying to protect you," he said, stepping closer. "If my father finds out, he'll ruin you. Your career, your life. He doesn't care. I can't let that happen." "And what about what I want?" I shot back. "I'm not some damsel you need to save, Ethan. I chose this. I chose you." He looked at me, his eyes wet. "I don't deserve you." The words broke something in me. I closed the distance between us, kissing him with everything I had: fear, love, desperation. He kissed me back, his hands trembling. And for a moment, I thought we could make it work. But then his phone rang, shattering the moment. It was his father. Ethan answered, his voice tight. And when he hung up, his face was ashen. "He wants me at the house tomorrow. Says it's urgent." "Go," I said, my voice hollow. "But don't shut me out. Promise me." He nodded, but there was no conviction in it. I left the office alone, the city a blur of lights and noise. I didn't sleep that night, my mind racing with what-ifs. What if his father knew? What if Ethan chose his family over me? What if this was the end? The next morning, Ethan texted me, "I'm sorry." 2 words, and they gutted me. I tried calling, but he didn't answer. I went to the office, hoping to find him, but he wasn't there. Sarah was, though, and her eyes were softer than usual. "He's gone, James," she said quietly. "Left for Connecticut this morning. Said he needed to clear his head." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Gone. Without a word. I wanted to scream, to cry, to demand answers. But all I could do was nod and walk away, my heart in pieces. The next week was a haze of pain and routine. I went through the motions: work, home, repeat, but every moment felt hollow. Ethan was gone, and the office felt like a ghost town without him. Sarah stopped prying, but her pitying looks were worse. I wanted to hate her, but I couldn't. She'd warned me, and I hadn't listened. I kept checking my phone, hoping for a message, a call, anything. Nothing came. By Thursday, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove to Connecticut, to the address Ethan had mentioned, on a sprawling estate that screamed old money. I didn't know what I'd say, but I needed to see him, to know if we were over. The house was intimidating, all stone and ivy, with a gate that looked like it belonged to a fortress. I rang the buzzer, my heart pounding, and a voice crackled through the intercom. "Who is this?" "James Harper," I said, my voice shaking. "I need to see Ethan." Silence. Then the gate buzzed open, I drove up, my hands gripping the wheel. And there he was, standing on the front steps, his face pale. "James, what are you doing here?" "I couldn't wait," I said, stepping out of the car. "You left. You didn't even say goodbye." He looked away, his jaw tight. I didn't have a choice. My father, he knows. My heart stopped. "Knows what?" "About us," he said, his voice barely audible. Sarah told him. Not out of malice, she thought she was protecting the firm. But he knows. And he's furious. I felt like I'd been punched. "So what now? You're just going to let him win?" Ethan's eyes met mine, raw and desperate. "I don't know how to fight him, James. He's my father. He's everything." "And what am I?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Am I nothing?" He stepped closer, his hand reaching for mine. But he stopped short. "You're everything. That's why this hurts so much." We stood there, the wind whipping around us, the weight of his words sinking in. I wanted to scream, to shake him, to make him see that we could fight this together. But before I could say anything, the front door opened, and Richard Caldwell stepped out. "James," he said, his voice cold. "You're a long way from the office." I straightened, forcing myself to meet his gaze. "I came to see Ethan." Richard's eyes flicked to his son, then back to me. "This ends now. Whatever this is, it's over. Ethan has a future to think about. You'd do well to remember yours." The words cut deep, but I didn't back down. "With all due respect, Mr. Caldwell, that's not your call." His face hardened, but before he could respond, Ethan stepped forward. "Dad, stop. I'm not a kid anymore. You don't get to control my life." The air crackled with tension. Richard stared at Ethan, his expression unreadable, then turned and walked back inside without a word. Ethan looked at me, his eyes wet but resolute. "I'm done hiding," he said. "I don't know what happens next, but I'm done." The drive back to New York was quiet, but it was a different kind of silence, not heavy with fear, but alive with possibility. Ethan sat beside me, his hand resting on mine, his face a mix of exhaustion and determination. We didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, we were facing it together. Back at the firm, the fallout was immediate. Richard called Ethan into a meeting the next day, threatening to cut him off not just from the firm, but from the family. Ethan stood his ground, his voice steady as he told his father he was done pretending. I wasn't there, but when Ethan recounted it later, I could hear the pride in his voice, the weight lifting. Sarah apologized, her face flushed with guilt. "I thought I was doing the right thing," she said. I forgave her not because it didn't hurt, but because holding on to anger wouldn't change anything. The firm didn't fire Ethan, but the board sidelined him, giving him smaller accounts. A subtle punishment. I expected him to crumble, but he didn't. Instead, he started looking for new opportunities, talking about starting his own agency, one where he could be himself without fear. I kept my job, too, though the whispers followed me. I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I wasn't hiding. I was James Harper Gay. In love. And unafraid. It wasn't easy. There were days when the judgment stung. When I worried about my career. My future. But every time I looked at Ethan, I knew it was worth it. One night, months later, we sat on the roof of my apartment building, the city sprawling below us. Ethan took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my skin. "I never thought I could have this," he said, his voice soft. "You. Us. A life where I'm not pretending." I leaned against him, the warmth of his body grounding me. "We're not just surviving anymore," I said. "We're living." The stars above us were faint, drowned out by the city's glow. But they were there, steady and unchanging. Like us. We'd fought for this through fear, through secrets, through locked doors and hard truths. And we'd won. The world wasn't perfect. There were still battles to fight, prejudices to face. But we had each other. And that was enough. As the city hummed below, I realized that love wasn't just about the moments of joy. It was about the courage to stand together, to lock the door on fear and step into the light.